Hey everyone. If you're like me and you grew up in Western civilization, you've probably come across a ton of literature, a ton of poetry, a ton of written work that just confuses you, that just that just blows your mind, that you just don't get. So me, having grown up in the U.S., throughout my entire life, I've read things, whether they be religious within the Bible itself as a Christian, whether they be poems in school from when I was a boy, different poems, different types of literature, and not so much movies. Movies were made kind of, in modern times, obviously, after the world moved away from being mystical and being kind of connected to that. So movies are kind of in a different category. I would say songs are in a different category. But oftentimes you read poetry, you read literature, and this is just personally me. And I read it throughout my entire life, my whole life, until I started meditating and doing psychedelics. And I this is how I approached it. I read the poem and I thought, okay, it's a different person than me writing it. This person has different thoughts, different conceptions, they're using words differently, and I can't really understand what they're saying. Maybe the poem was, oh, on the eve of Christmas, I took a hike up the mountain, and I went up the mountain, and I looked back at the city, then I looked back at the sky, and I was no more. I was no more. I was nowhere to be found. I looked back at the sky, and I looked back at the village, and they were there, but I wasn't there. And I connected to the Almighty. I connected to the heavens. I connected to the universe. Poems that have that kind of tone, or writing that has that kind of tone. Writing that says I no longer I now no longer exist. I understand I am at once everything and nothing at the same time. Words like that. I understand I am at once nothing and everything at the same time. Or writing like, um, down that magical road when I left my village and I was going to a certain work. This guy's writing about it. He takes a detour, and a few months he spends in a village. He clearly takes psychedelics in that village. Doesn't talk about that, but just says the tea in that village made me made me see God and myself in a completely new way. It made me see that God was everywhere and that I was nowhere. Things like that. Tons of it. Tons of it. All good literature has some of that imbued in it, but some good literature has a ton of that imbued. Clearly people were having mystical experiences in the past. And clearly some of the best literature that we read today, like poems, short stories, it's hard to come up with great examples, but there are tons of examples. Tons. You must have in your own life, have experienced reading something that other people say is good, something that other people want you to read, like a schoolmaster or principal or a school board. Reading those things and seeing, "Oh, I have no connection with this. I don't see how this is magical. These are just words. This is dry. There's no depth to it." Psychedelics, meditation, and mystical experiences, they color it like a coloring book that has no colors. They provide the color, like a shallow, tiny pool of water. They take that pool of water and they make it the deepest pool of water that ever has been, and you could go all the way down and all the way to the top, and you could explore that pool. That's what psychedelics give you. Once I started doing them, once I started meditating and having a mystical life, having a spiritual life properly, though every one of those pieces of literature mostly, I understand them. I understand what it means to say I climbed to the mountain, I looked at the sky, and then I realized I was nowhere and God was everywhere. I understand now what that means. But when I was 10, when I was 25, I did not get it. I just simply did not get it. It was like a different world to me. The conception I had of those people is just so wrong, so diluted. I thought these people were so different than me, and that I had no idea what they were talking about. I was just so confused. I was just so confused. I thought, oh, it's natural. Either they were different than me, or sometimes I also thought that the language had changed. That maybe if I was reading it during their time, I would have a different understanding of it, right? If I was reading it as a contemporary. But that's not true. If I was reading it as a contemporary and I wasn't in the mystical realm, I would still think it's dry. I would still think it's shallow. I would still not get it. But meditation and mystical experiences, mystical existence, psychedelics, these kinds of medicines, they help you. They help you connect with um, with everything that else that is out there in the world. They help you connect with just right now around you. There's right now around you, right? If you're alone in a room, right now around you, there's an entire mystical world going on, and you have no clue. You're completely blind to it. When you take psychedelics, you get a glimpse of it, and that allows you to realize, oh wow, that's what they were talking about. So when the guy said, as I was going to like see my bride, all across the continent, right, going to see like some prince is going to see his bride. It's an Asian country. And he stops at a village for a few months, and in that village he's reborn, and he writes crazy things. You know, for somebody that's never had a mystical experience, they won't get it, but for somebody that has, they'll get it right away.